वो एक्चुअली क्लास बोला था कि टॉप है तो मत वो फोन करना, लेकिन
Good morning, everyone, to one and all gathered here on this wonderful morning. I would like to welcome you all here today. I, Anish Kumar, Research Scholar, Department of Mathematics, NIT Jamshedpur. I would like to thanks to organizers of this conference for giving me this opportunity to represent our session chair. Our session chair are Dr. Pratibha Tyagi and Dr. Umesh Singh. Dr. Pratibha Tyagi is an assistant professor at Department of Mathematics, Parul University, Baroda. Dr. Pratibha Tyagi is graduated from the CCS University, Meerut with a master's degree in mathematics in year 2010. She received her PhD in mathematics from DIT University in 2019 under guidance of Dr. Ratnesh Kumar Mishra, assistant professor in IT Jamshedpur. She also worked as an assistant professor at Doon Business School, Dehradun. She has published several research papers in internationally reputed journals and conferences. Dr. Umesh Kumar Singh is an associate professor at Department of Mathematics, Satish Chandra College, Balia. He did BSc and MSc from University of Allahabad and PhD from BS Purvanchal University, Jaunpur. He joined as lecturer in Satish Chandra College, Balia in 2005. He has published several research articles, internationally reputed journal and conferences. So I want to hand over the session to Dr. Pratibha Tyagi ma'am and Sir Umesh sir. So please ma'am and sir.
Thank you very much, Anish, to give a very beautiful introduction for us. And thanks to the organizer, those who have given this chance to chair this session. And good morning, Umesh sir. You are mute, sir. Unmute yourself. Umesh sir, unmute yourself. Still you are mute, sir. You have to unmute. Left hand side of the camera might be this is red now. Once you remove the headphone, then might be you can unmute yourself, then later you can connect it, sir. Sir, try to rejoin. Sir, try to rejoin.
Hello.
Yes,
Good morning, ma'am.
yes, 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 sir.
There is some problem in unmuting my phone.
Okay, sir. Shall we start the session? Shall we start the session, sir?
Shall we start? इसे आप करिए इससे लिफ्ट कर दीजिए.
ये तो हो गई है ना.
It's spinning, it's louding. Yes. Okay, so our session is first candidate is P17 Arul Dose. Are you here?
Yes, madam.
Okay, please continue. Present your screen.
Yes. Yes, madam.
Hello.
Is it visible, ma'am?
Yeah, yeah. You can
Hello.
proceed now.
Uh,
Yes.
yes.
Arundas, you can proceed.
Yes, sir. Good morning to one and all. I am Arul Das, research scholar, Department of Mathematics, Periyar University, Salem. My presentation title is Set ring property in biamalgamator algebras along ideals. Abstract, let F from A to B and G from A to C be two ring homomorphisms, and let J and J dash be two ideals of B and C respectively, such that F inverse of J equal to G inverse of J dash. In this presentation, we give a characterization for the biamalgamation of A with B comma C along J dash with respect to F and G to be a SIT ring. We also give some characterization for strong SIT rings. Introduction. Throughout the paper, R denotes an associative ring with identity. An element A in a ring is an idempotent if A square equal to A. Idempotents are key elements in understanding the structure of a ring. When a ring has a rich supply of idempotents, one would usually expect something nice about the structure of a ring. An extreme case in the notion of Boolean rings in which every element is an idempotent. Boolean rings are important in algebra and have application in other areas. In 2016, Jing et al. Investigated that a ring for which every element is a sum of an idempotent and a tripotent that commute. For any idempotent E, both E and minus E are tripotents, that is, the elements equal to their cubes. If alpha from A to C, beta from B to C are two ring homomorphisms, then the subring B defined as set of all A comma B in A cross B such that alpha of A equal to beta of B is called the bullback of alpha and beta. Let alpha from A to C, beta from A to C, and F from A to B be ring homomorphisms. In the paper, the author studied amalgamator algebra within the frame of fullback alpha cross beta such that alpha equal to beta composition F. In this motivation, the authors created the new construction called biamalgamator algebra, which arises as fullbacks alpha cross B such that the following diagram of ring homomorphism is commute with alpha composition pi of alpha cross beta equal to alpha composition of f of A, where pi denotes the canonical projection of B cross C over B. Namely, let F from A to B and G from A to C be two ring homomorphisms, and let J and J dash be two ideals of B and C respectively, such that F inverse of J equal to G inverse of J dash. The biamalgamation of A with B comma C along J Z dash with respect to F comma G is a subring of B cross C given by like this. The definition and the examples. First, we see that the definition of SIT ring. A ring is said to be SIT ring if every element is a sum of an idempotent and a tripotent. The strong means the idempotent and tripotents are commutative. For example, Z6, Z3 direct sum Z3, Z2 the group ring Z3 C2, the quotient Z2 direct sum Z2 over Z2 direct sum singleton 0, and Z4 of X over ideal generated by 2x comma x squared minus 2, And these are the strong SIT ring, but the set of all triangle matrices order 2 over Z2 is a SIT ring but not competitive. Prepositions. The class of SIT rings is closed under direct product and homomorphic images. Any factoring of a SIT ring is a SIT ring. If R is a ring for which 3 equal to E plus F, where E square equal to E and F cube equal to F, then 24 equal to 0 in R. Theorem. A ring R is a SIT ring F1 only if R is isomorphic to R1 cross R2, where R1, R2 are SIT rings. 2 cube equal to 0 in R1 and 3 equal to 0 in R2. Proof. The sufficient is clear by the preposition of the R1, R2 are SIT ring. A direct product of SIT rings is SIT ring. Therefore, the sufficient is clear. For the necessity, assume that R is a SIT ring. And then by above preposition, 24 is like that 2 power 3 into 3 equal to 0. Thus, 2 cube R intersection 3R equal to 0 and R equal to 2 power cube R plus 3R. By Chinese remainder theorem, R is isomorphic to R over 2 cube R cross R over 3R. Let we take R1 equal to R over 2 cube R. The quotient of factoring of SIT ring is a SIT ring. Therefore, R1 is a SIT ring and also R2 also SIT ring. Then R1, R2 are SIT rings by above theorem. With the 2 cube equal to 0 in R1, 3 equal to 0 in R2, and R is isomorphic to R1 cross R2. The direct product of a ring is a SIT ring if and only if for each Ri is a SIT ring. The proof is like that. Suppose R is a SIT ring, then each Ri is a homomorphic image of R via the natural projection map. Hence, each Ri is a SIT ring. Conversely, suppose that each Ri is a SIT ring, let X equal to X size belongs to product of Ri. Then each I Xi equal to Ei plus Ti for some Ei belongs to idempotent of Ri and Ti belongs to tripotent of Ri. And then Xi equal to Xi equal to Ei plus Ti, Ei in idempotent of R and Ti belongs to tripotent of. Hence, X is a SIT element. Theorem. R be a ring with 2 belongs to Jacobson radical of R, then the following statements are equivalent. One is R is a strong SIT ring. Second is R is a strong SIT ring with 2 cube equal to 0. 3 is R has a identity x power 6 equal to x power 4. 4 R over Jacobson radical is Jacobson radical of R is Boolean and j square equal to 2j for every j in Jacobson radical of R. R over j of R is Boolean and u of R is a group of exponent 2. Here u of R is a set of all unit elements, comma group. That's denoted by u of R. A group ring over SIT ring. Let R be a ring, G be a group. RG denotes the group ring of group G over R. Let pi from R to RG to R be a ring homomorphisms and is defined by like this. The map pi is called amalgamation map. Then the kernel of pi is called amalgamation of ideal of a group ring RG and is denoted by delta of RG. And note that the delta of RG is an ideal of RG generated by the set of all 1 minus G, G in G.
Because the
Three.
length of time. We are having only 12 minutes time to present. You have
Madam?
to sum up your presentation early because
madam.
there is a 12 minutes for total including the question answer session. Okay?
Okay, madam. Okay, madam. I will fast. Remark: a group ring over a finite field need not be a SIT ring. And the example is like that F3C2 is a SIT ring, but F5C2 in the group ring is not a SIT ring. The group ring over reduced ring is not a SIT ring. Example like this. Group ring over local ring need not be a SIT ring. Z4C2 is a SIT ring, but F5C2, the group ring F5C2 is not a SIT ring. As well as a group ring over a SIT ring need not be a SIT ring. Definition, the bioanalysis definition, as you say earlier, and the definition, a ring is called a uniquely SIT ring if each element in R can be written uniquely as a sum of an idempotent and tripotent. The main theorem, if amalgamation is SIT ring, then f of a plus j and g of a plus j dash are SIT ring. The proof is homomorphic image of a SIT ring is a SIT ring. Therefore, thus in the view of the paper, we have the following isomorphism of the rings. Therefore, hence f of a plus j and g of a plus j dash are SIT ring. Theorem, assume that A is a SIT ring and f of a plus j over j and g of a plus j dash over j dash are uniquely SIT ring. The converse of the above theorem is also true. Amalgamation is a SIT ring if and only if f of a plus j and g of a plus j dash are SIT ring. Theorem, let f from a to b and f from a to c feed.
Taken a lot of time. Sum up.
Okay. Thank you, madam. These are the some references.
Okay. Any question in audience? Any question? Okay, Mr. Azul.
Yes, madam.
What is exactly amalgamation? You have used the word by amalgamation.
Yes,
What
madam.
is the mean
By-
by what you are using with the SIT ring?
Yes, madam. Amalgamation is introduced the fourth, and amalgamation is meaning that subring of. Hello, madam.
Yes, I'm hearing answer.
Amalgamation is a subring of. We give a two homomorphism f from. The definition is like that, ma'am.
It means
A,
but
the set of all f of a.
in place of amalgamation, we can use the subring.
Yes, madam. Subring of B cross C.
We
Amalgamation
are
is a sub.
taking B and C, they both are the SIT ring.
No, madam. No, madam. General ring, ma'am.
General ring, and we are taking the cross product in ordered pair. We are explaining the amalgamation. Then amalgamation,
Yes.
how to relate your SIT ring. You have used the word in your title also.
Yes, madam.
And the one that is okay. One you have written is the idempotent, and you have taken that 2 to the power 3 is 0. So what is the meaning of this line? Is this idempotent or nilpotent?
Where, madam?
You have
This
written when you were explaining about the properties and the definition of SIT. So somewhere
Yes,
you have written 2 to the power 3 is equals to 0. One theorem also you have proved, you have given the proof also. Then you have written 2 is belongs to the one ring and 3 is belongs to the other. So 2 to the
Yes,
power
madam.
3 is equals to 0. What exactly is showing here? 2
Yes,
to
madam. The
this theorem 2 to the power 3. You have written a ring is a strong SIT ring.
yes, madam.
A ring is isomorphism, is the cross product of two rings, R1
Yes,
and
madam.
R2, and both
Yes,
are
madam.
R1 and R2 both are the SIT ring. If you will take the
Yes,
cross
madam.
and it is isomorphism, the result is also you will get the SIT ring. So here you have defined it as 2 to the power 3, exponent is 3 is equals to 0, and
Yes, madam. I am using this statement, ma'am.
I'm not getting how you got the 2 to the power 3 is equals to 0, and you are
Okay.
saying 3 is equals to 0 in R2. This statement I'm not getting. Kindly make it clear.
The statement is in paper like that, ma'am.
But I am audible to the candidate.
Yes, madam.
I'm clearly audible to everyone, I think. Okay. So yes. Chalo. Anyways, no issue. No issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, Ados. The next.
Thank,
Okay, Nak. Okay. Thank you.
I leave, ma'am.
You can leave. Next is the P18, Vijay Anand. Vijay Anand is here. Vijay Anand is here. Kindly share your presentation. Arul, you can stop presenting. Yes, the next candidate is Vijay Anand V. Are you here? Vijay Anand.
No, ma'am.
Vijay Anand is not here. Okay, the next
Yes,
candidate is Amarjeet Kaur Sani, P19. P19, Amarjeet Kaur Sani is here. Okay. No issue. Next is Namrata, P54. Namrata.
Is Namrata
Yes,
Montara
I'm
here?
Okay, you can.
Ma'am, I'm here.
You can continue with your presentation. Please carry on.
Okay, madam. presentation खोला मैं? Ma'am, my screen is
Your
visible.
screen is not visible.
Hello, am I audible?
Now it is visible, ma'am.
Now it's not visible. Yes, sir. You are saying something, Rafiq, sir.
Okay, okay. Umesh sir, good morning.
Ma'am, now my screen is visible.
Now I think you need. Now it's presenting. Now it's visible.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Namaskar, sir.
There was some.
Umesh, sir, you need to unmute yourself first.
Yeah.
हाँ,
Now the screen is visible. You can proceed. Namaskar, namaskar.
field structure of the genetic code.
Show on the full screen. Let's
Should I start presentation, ma'am?
yes, you can start.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Namrata Monpara. I am from MSc, Marwadi University. My topic is a phase structure of the genetic code. This is abstract. In this paper, we have explored the phase structure on the set of codons. Mathematics has been used in biological as early as 13th century when Fibonacci series to use to describe a growing population of the rabbit. In 18th century, Bernoulli applied the mathematics to describe a small pox on human population.
Namrata, switch on your camera.
Okay, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you are not audible.
From where you are presenting using laptop and phone.
Laptop.
Why you switch on your camera, then your presentation is gone. You have to share it again quickly. Yes. Yes, now it is visible. Continue.
Mathematical and theoretical biology or biomathematics is a branch of biology which apply a theoretical analysis, mathematical models, and abstraction of the living organism to investigate the principle that govern the structure development. In our, we have the studies algebraic structure on the genetic code. In genetic code here, 4 DNA base A, C, G, T. Following the word of Sanchez, it Ali and Pukan, this is preliminaries group, ring, subring, maximal ideal, group, quotient ring, field, group and ring structure on the genetic code. Sanchez et al. Observed that the 4 RNA base can be arranged the order in the way by consider the codon anticodon interaction between them. In this ordering, the hydrogen bond number and the chemical types of basic play an important role. Here are the two orders of base set. First one is a ACGU and second is a UGCA. We will consider the order A, C, G and U. If we consider the three base, then it make up codons. The 4 nucleotide and base can be arranged in the group structure as well as ring structure with respect to the operation defined in table 1 and table 2. Table 1 is a represent sum operation on the P and table 2 is a represent product operation on P. The codon set is arranged in the list starting from codon A, and ending and codon.
But your slide
Yes,
is
ma'am.
not rolling down here. It is stuck on introduction.
Ma'am,
Miss
मैं फिर से
Namrata, your slides are not.
मैं फिर से प्रेजेंट करती हूँ सर.
Calm down and do it.
Now my screen is visible, ma'am.
It's presenting. Can you do on full?
Ma'am, my screen is
Your
visible.
screen is visible. Can you do on the full screen?
The codon set is arranged.
Continue.
The codon set is arranged in the list starting from codon A and ending at codon UUU. Further, the sum operation is defined on the set of codon to obtain a group structure. In this group denoted by CG. CG is isomorphic with Z64. Z64 is a ring. Starting from 0. 0 is a represent AAN and 63 is a represent UUU. All the 64 codons are arranged from AAA to UUU as an increase the scale 0 to 63. The sum operation between two codons is obtained to the less biological importance base to the most important base. Now we sum operation is a C plus U. If we consider AGC plus UGU, the corresponding base is a third position. Third position is a less biological importance. The corresponding base is a third position are added according to the sum table. The resultant base is a sum operation is a previous to added the base. Then the new value is written and the C is added the next position. The other base are adding the according to sum table 1 going from the
Change
first
your
base
slide,
to the
change your
second
slide.
base.
The table 1 slide is not shown. Change.
Which slide you
Which
saw?
you have read earlier. In which you were explaining about the CG and Z64.
11 number.
11 number. This 11 number. Why it is not? Now it is changed.
Now 13. Okay.
And now, it is 13.
a product operation is a defined on the group CG. So CG is a become a ring isomorphic to ring Z64. The codon AAC is a generator of this group. So for any codons U belongs to CG, U is equal to K times AAC. For some K belongs to Z64. The product operation is denoted by the product operation in the set of CG is defined as follow. U is equal to K times AAC is belongs to CG and V is equal to consider K dash time AAC. Then U cross V is equal to K dot K dash time AAC. Tree structure of the genetic code. Once the group and ring structure is obtained, we can think of the field structure on the set of codons. Since the multiplicative inverse of AAG, CAA, and CAG does not exist in the CG, hence CG is not filled. However, some subset of CG can be considered which can include a field structure. X1, X2, X3, X4 and X5 are subset of CG. X1 is a subset of X2, X2 is a subset of X3, X3 is a subset of X4 and X4 is a subset of X5 and X5 is a subset of CG. Here X1, X2, X3, X4 and X5 are ideal. Further, X5 is a maximum ideal and X5 is a commutative and proper ideal. Hence, by well-known theorem, CG is a commutative ring with unit element ASC and X5 is a maximal ideal. Hence, we can say that CG by X5 is a field. Those are references.
Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anybody who's having any query? Sir, can you explain me? You have taken the X5.
Ma'am, your voice is not clear.
Who said X5 is the maximal ideal?
Definition of maximal ideal.
How you will show that X5 is a maximal ideal?
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, we can show that X1, X2, X3, X4 and X5 is a subset of CG. Here only 5 subset of CG and X5 is a maximum ideal because X5 is a subset of CG and smaller than X5 is a X4. Hence, X5 is a maximal ideal because it is a commutative and proper
What is the
ideal.
definition of maximal ideal?
Maximum ideal. If I is a belongs to I is a subset of J and J is a subset of R, then I is equal to J and J is equal to R, then R is a proper ideal of R.
And maximal?
If I is a maximal ideal of a group R, a ring R, then I is a subset of J and J is a subset of R. Then if I is equal to J and J is equal to R, then we can say that I is a maximal
And you
ideal.
have written CG with respect to addition and the direct sum is not a field. Some codes you have taken UAC.
Ma'am, CG is not a field, but it is a ring.
Is not a field. That I'm asking now. How you have proved that by taking the codons A and UUC, then you have taken the combination of 3. Then how you have shown this is not a field? What exactly you got the result? Then you said it is not a field. Yes. You have written once the group and ring structure is obtained, we can think of a field structure. So on the set of codons, the multiplicative inverse of AAG and CAG
not exist.
So what are the multiplicative inverse of AAG? What is AAA?
Ma'am, AAG has no inverse in this CG.
You have taken the codons AAA and UUU. So you are
A is ideal.
so
Identity.
you are taking the genetic codes, na?
Yes, ma'am.
So in term of ideals, you are taking it. Show this table. Show this table. Pose on the table. There are two tables you have taken. Go back to the two tables. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So here you have taken some operation on P. What is P here? It is group or a ring.
P some operation. Table 1 is a represent some operation on P, and P is a set.
P
is a set, ma'am. Is a isomorphic with Z4.
Isomorphic with Z4. Then you have taken with respect to addition and with respect to multiplication.
Multiplication.
Okay, then
yes,
come to the next table, combined table. ACGU, here you have taken the combination AAA, K. These are the sequences showing the number 0, 1, 2, 3 and up to 63.
Yes.
These are the combination you are getting by the taking AAA, AACC, AAG. Okay. I got it, Namrata. Anybody,
yes.
Sir, you want to ask anything? Done, sir?
Thank you, Amrita ji.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, shall we go for next? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Namrata.
Our next.
Okay, thank you.
And
thank you,
make
everyone.
your question answer session more clear so that further, na? Okay, all the best.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to invite Miss Monica.
Yes, sir.
Now you can present your paper.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, proceed.
Is it visible, sir?
You are visible.
Is my slide visible?
Yes, ma'am. This is visible.
Okay. Good morning to the chairpersons of this session and all the participants. I'm Monica. I'm a research scholar in Department of Mathematics, Guru Jambheshwar University of Science and Technology, and I'm pursuing my research under the supervision of Dr. Pankaj Kumar. In the present paper, we will find the number of solutions of this equation over a subgroup of FQ star. So this is the outline of my presentation. I will discuss abstract, then introduction, then some preliminaries which we are going to use in proving our results. And these are the two main results where we will find the number of solutions of this equation over a subgroup of FQ star, and then we will find the number of distinct solutions of this equation. And in the end, we will have examples and references. So basically in this paper, we'll consider Q as an odd prime and FQ as a finite field. And FQ asterisk will denote the non-zero elements of this field, and which we know that forms a multiplicative group. And gamma is the primitive element of FQ. So we consider the set S, which is generated by gamma square and which will become a subgroup of FQ asterisk. As Q is an odd prime, and we know that every odd prime is either of the form 4k plus 1 or 4k plus 3. So for these two cases, we will compute the number of solutions of this equation x plus y plus z equals to w modulo Q over S. So this means that we will find the number of solutions of the sum of elements of S modulo Q. How many times the sum of these elements would be? W means an element of S. So how many times we will add the three elements of S and we get an element of S. So when we talk about mathematics, often we come across linear equations while working in various fields of such as coding theory, cryptography. So we need to find the solutions of these equations. So in present paper, we'll find the solutions of one such equation in which we have considered the three unknowns x, y, and z. Over the field of real numbers, obviously this will have infinite number of solutions. But if we consider a finite field, then it will have finite number of solutions. So is it possible to find how many finite number of solutions it will have? So in present paper, we'll count the number of such solutions over a subgroup of FQ star. So what was the motivation behind this study? In paper 2, authors have found the number of solutions of equations x plus y equals to t over s. So in present paper, firstly, we will simplify their result, present their result in a simpler way, and then we will generalize and extend our result to find the sum of three elements of S and count how many times their sum would be an element of S. So before that, we would require some prerequisites. So here are the preliminaries. So throughout this paper, we will consider Q as an odd prime. FQ will represent the finite field. FQ asterisk will represent the multiplicative group of non-zero elements of FQ. Gamma would be primitive element of FQ, and we consider S generated by gamma square. So in other words, we can say that S is actually a set of quadratic residues of Q. And we know that set of quadratic residues of a prime number makes a multiplicative group. So it is actually a subgroup of FQ star. And S dash would be used to represent the set of quadratic non-residues of Q. S is a set of quadratic residues. So here is this lemma which we will be use for proving our results. We know that the number of quadratic residues and number of quadratic residues for a prime Q would be Q minus 1 by 2. And if A and B are two quadratic residues, then their product would be quadratic residue. And if both are non-residue, then also the product would be a residue. But if A and B have different parity, then their product would be quadratic non-residue. Also, the additive inverse of 1 would be quadratic residue or non-residue. That would depend on the nature of Q. If Q is of the form 4k plus 1, then minus 1 would be quadratic residue, and otherwise minus 1 would be quadratic non-residue if Q is of the form 4k plus 3. So by this result, if Q equals to 4k plus 1, then both X and its additive inverse would have same parity. But if Q is of the form 4k plus 3, then element and its additive inverse would have different parity or vice versa. Again, we will use these two results, the nature of 2, whether 2 is a quadratic residue or non-residue. So Q2 would be quadratic residue if prime number is congruent to 7 or 1 modulo 8. And 2 would be non-residue if prime number is congruent to 5 or 3 modulo 8. Similarly, if Q is an odd prime which is not equals to 3, then 3 would be quadratic residue if Q is congruent to plus minus 1 modulo 12, and 3 would be non-residue if Q is congruent to plus minus 5 modulo 12. So this is the basic information which we will need for proving our results. So we come to our main result. So here, firstly, we will prove the results of main results of paper 2 in a simpler way. As I stated earlier, that Q is either of the form 4k plus 1 or 4k plus 3. So we will discuss two cases. Firstly, we will start with Q equals to 4k plus 3. So if Q is equals to 4k plus 3 be a prime number, then the sum of two quadratic residue would be a quadratic residue for Q minus 1 by 2 into Q minus 3 by 4 times. Sum of two quadratic residue would never be 0 if Q is of the form 4k plus 3. And sum of two quadratic residue would be a non-residue for Q minus 1 by 2 into Q plus 1 by 4 times. And here we have proved this result in a simpler way. Now, the sum of a quadratic residue and a non-residue would be a residue for Q minus 1 by 2 into Q minus 3 by 4 times, which we have proved here. Now comes the main result. If Q is 4k plus 3 type of prime, then the sum of 3 quadratic residue would be a quadratic residue for q minus 1 by 2 into q minus 3 by 4 whole square plus q plus 1 by 4 into q minus 3 by 4 times. So here we will prove this. So for this, we consider the equation 5. Now we take two elements, say x and y, and we consider that x plus y equals to r. That is equation 6. So in equation 6, the solutions will depend on the nature of R. So for Q equals to 4K plus 3. By lemma 3.1, it is clear that either R would be quadratic residue or R would be quadratic non-residue, because for 0, they have no solution. So depending on the nature of R, we discuss following two cases. Let us consider that R is a quadratic residue. So by lemma 3.1, 5 would have q minus 3 by 4 solutions for fixed value of R. But 6 has q minus 1 by 2 into q minus 3 by 4 solutions. Therefore, total number of solutions of equation 5 would be given by 7. Now, if R is a quadratic non-residue, so by corollary 3.2, 5 has q minus 3 by 4 solutions for fixed value of R. But by lemma 3.136 has q minus 1 by 2 into q plus 1 by 4 solutions. Therefore, total number of solutions of 5 would be given by 8. And hence, using 8 and 7, our result follows. Now we discuss the case when q is equals to 4k plus 1. If q is 4k plus 1 type of prime number, then the number sum of two quadratic residue would be quadratic residue for q minus 1 by 2 into q minus 5 by 4 times. Their sum would be 0 for q minus 1 by 2 times. And their sum would be a quadratic non-residue for q minus 1 square by 8 times. So here is the simpler proof. And sum of quadratic residue and non-residue would be residue for q minus 1 by 2 into q minus 1 by 4 times. Proof is as follows. Now we find the sum of 3 quadratic residue. How many times the sum of 3 quadratic residue would be residue for q equals to 4k plus 1 type of prime. So this is counted in this theorem. So again, we proceed as in the earlier theorem, but here in 14, you can see that R, the nature of R could be quadratic residue, R could be non-residue, or R could be 0. So in this case, we will have 3 cases. So let R belongs to a set of quadratic residue. So in that case, 13 has q minus 5 by 4 solutions by lemma 3.4 part 1. But 14 has q minus 1 by 2 into q minus 5 by 4 solutions. Therefore, total number of solutions of 13 would be given by 15. Similarly, if R is a quadratic non-residue, then total number of solutions of 13 would be given by 16. But when R equals to 0, by lemma 3.4 part 2, in this case, as q equals to 4k plus 1, therefore, it will have solutions, and number of solutions of 13 would be given by 17. So by 15, 16, and 17, our result follows. So here we have counted the number of solutions of this equation. That means how many times the sum of 3 quadratic residue would be a quadratic residue. But the above cases includes the cases in which there is repetition. So now in section 4, we find the number of distinct solutions where we would avoid the repetitions. So theorem 4.1 counts the number of distinct solutions for this equation. Now by we consider x plus y plus z equals to w by theorem 3.3. This has solutions given by this. For distinct solutions, we need to exclude the cases that involves repetition. So consider cases x plus z. That means x and y are equal here. So this can be rewritten as equation number 20. Then by lemma 2.1, the behavior of 2x, whether it would be a quadratic residue or non-residue, that would depend on the behavior of 2. So by lemma 3.1 and corollary 3.2, 20 would have q minus 1 by 2 into q minus 3 by 4 solutions. But these solutions also include the case when x could be equals to z. depending on whether 3 belongs to S or 3 does not belongs to S. That means 3 is either a quadratic residue or a non-residue. We have following two cases. So let us consider that 3 belongs to S, that is 3 is a quadratic residue. In that case, this equation would have Q minus 1 by 2 solutions. Therefore, number of solutions of 19 for the case when X is not equals to Z. So we need to subtract these solutions, Q minus 1 by 2 solutions from the earlier total number of solutions of 20. So these would be the number of solutions of 19. Also, X plus Z could be written as X plus Z plus Z plus X equals to Z plus X plus X. So these would be represent the same set of solutions. So this is repeated 3 times in the solution set of 18. Thus we are going to exclude these cases. So total number of solutions which we need to exclude would be given by 22. Similarly, if 3 is a quadratic non-residue, then X plus X equals to W has no solution in S, because 3 is a quadratic non-residue and X is a residue. So 3 times of X by lemma 2.1, that would be a non-residue. So it would have no solution in S. Therefore, total number of solutions of type XXZ such that X not equals to Z would be given by 23. And combining both these cases and the solution of the type XXX, we have this result. And here we also have considered the fact that any solution XYZ will have 3 factorial permutation. That's why we have divided the total number of solution by 6. And here A represent the value 1 if 3 is a quadratic residue and 0 otherwise. So that's how we have counted the number of solutions for the case when Q is equals to 4K plus 3. Now we will count the number of solutions of this equation for the case Q equals to 4K plus 1. So this will be given by theorem 4.2. And we can prove this theorem in the similar way as we have proved theorem 4.1. So now we have examples which are used to find the solutions for a prime Q equals to 97. We know that 97 is congruent to 1 modulo 4. So by theorem 2.3 and 2.4, we can find the nature of 2 and 3. So both 2 and 3 are quadratic residue. And depending on their nature, theorem 4.2 gives us the number of solutions of this equation. And these are some more examples for both the cases. This 47 represents the case when Q is congruent to 3 modulo 4. So here we have counted the solution by using theorem 4.1. In this also, this is also of the type Q is congruent to 3 modulo 4. So these are the references. Thank you so much. Any queries?
Any queries? Go back to your example, Monica.
Sure, ma'am. Which example, ma'am?
First, my question is this. You have considered the equation x plus y plus z is equals to w over the subgroup f star q, where q is the moduli. So on what basis of that you have considered this equation? Exactly, I want to know. Your research work is quite interesting. How you got this equation?
As I mentioned that in paper 2, the authors have found the sum of quadratic residues. Okay. They have found the behavior of how the sum of quadratic residue would behave. So we extended their result to find the sum of 3 quadratic residues.
Here the main thing is this: you are taking the quadratic residue and quadratic non-residue, yes. And you are finding the solution of this linear equation.
Yes.
Modulo Q. So as you have given this example, if we are taking Q is the 97, yeah, and it is 97 1 modulo 4, as you have explained the theorem. So whatever solution we got in the form 1/6 Q minus 1 by 2. So 8, 6, 8, 8 are the distinct solution of this given equation.
Yes, ma'am.
Am I right? Is this
yes,
you were
trying
to explain it?
Yes.
Okay.
that when we will add 3 quadratic residue, we will have 8 times the possibilities
Why you were
of having.
explaining in term of 4k plus 1 just because you have taken here the 4 unknowns? 4k plus 1 and 4k plus 3? Not in
That prime that depends. The nature of quadratic residue, as I mentioned earlier, depends on this form of Q. If Q is of the form 4k plus 1, then the number of solutions for sum of 2 quadratic residue would be different. If it is of the form 4k plus 3, then it would be different.
Can we go with,
So that's
can
why
we go with the 2k plus 1 or 2k plus 3?
But basically, quadratic residues are defined in this way.
Anyways.
Sorry, prime number is differentiated in these 2 ways. Sorry.
It's okay. Okay, sir. Do you have anyone in audience having any query? Then you can ask. And nice presentation is quite interesting. Monica,
Thank
all
you,
the
ma'am.
best for your future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica ji, for your nice presentation.
Yeah, can I stop?
For the next presentation,
Can I stop?
I invite Mr. Varun Kumar
You can leave.
from MGKVP Varanasi.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, are you audible?
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Sir, my presentation is visible to all of you.
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, the organizer, for giving me opportunity to present my research
Switch on
paper.
your camera.
And in this paper, okay. Okay. In this paper, we generalize finite injective modules to small finitely injective module. Before coming into the concept of a small finitely injective module, first we define some terminologies. First of all, R is an associative ring with identity, and modules are unitarily right-R modules. And a module is called M generated if there exists an epimorphism from copies of M to N. Then our module N is called finitely M generated if the index set I is finite. And in particular, the submodule N of M is called M cyclic submodule of M if it is isomorphic to M modulo L. It means equivalently to say that there is an epimorphism from M to N. And a submodule is called small, and if there exists submodule K is called small if there exists a submodule L of M such that K plus L is equal to M implies L is equal to M. And the module is called hollow if every proper submodule of it is small in M. And some undefined terminologies we refer to our reference number 1 and 2. First we come on to the interest of several mathematicians to study the finite injective module and principally injective modules. In 1969, R.N. Gupta introduced the concept of finite injective or F injective modules. And in his paper, he proved that if the ring is Noetherian, then if and only if F is finite injective, every finite injective module is injective. In 1972, Ramamurthy and Rangaswamy shows that M quasi-finite injective module, then every finitely generated submodule, which is a direct summand of M, if and only if S is isomorphic to direct summand of M. Means its submodule is isomorphic to a direct summand of M. After that, 1991, R. Wiesbauer introduced the concept of quasi-principal in the terminology, and
Sir, your voice is
In
breaking. Might be there
1999,
is a
San
network
et
issue.
al. Introduced. It may be occur network issue, because if I shut my video, then it may
Okay,
go
then you can
smoothly.
switch off your video because okay, you
There
can
is
switch off.
net jump. Yeah.
Please cut
Okay,
it
okay.
because your presentation should be presented clearly.
In 1999, San et al. Introduced the idea of M principally injective module, which is the generalization of notion of principally injective module studied by Nicholson and Yusuf in 1995. And he defined an R module is called M principally injective module if every R homomorphism from M cyclic submodule of M to N can be extended to an R homomorphism from M to N. And module is called quasi-principal injective if M is M principally injective. And SAN 99 shows that the quasi-principal injective module satisfies the condition C2 and C3. C2 condition is that if N is a direct summand of M and N is isomorphic to a direct summand of M, then M is also a direct summand of that module. And if A and B are two direct summands of M and A intersection B is equal to 0, then A direction B is also direct summand of M. These are the C2 and C3 condition. And Nicholson and Yusuf generalized this idea. And after that, in 2000, Jacob gave the idea of M finitely injective module, and he defined every R homomorphism from finitely M generated submodule of M to N can be extended to an R homomorphism from M to N. Previously defined several ideas, finite injective to principally injective to semi-injective, and after that M finitely injective. I motivate to work to generalize the idea of firstly M principally injective. In my paper in 2011, I generalized the idea of principally injective modules to small principally injective module and quasi-principally injective modules. So first we give some results on finitely injective module and define finitely injective module. M and N are right R modules, and N is called finitely M injective module if every homomorphism from a finitely generated submodule M to N can be extended to an homomorphism from M to N. We can define in the same way endomorphism rings S1, S2, Sn all are in members of endomorphism ring M. Then S1n, S2m plus S1 SNM, any homomorphism from this S1m, S2m, Smn can be extended to N can be extended from M to N. And if N is NF injective, then it is called quasi-FN injective. And the direct product and direct sum of quasi-F injective module is quasi-F injective, and any direct summand of MF injective module is also MF injective module. Now, there is a very important theorem which we generalize the previously given ideas. If M is a quasi-F injective module, then M is non-Kohafian if and only if there exists a decomposition M is equal to NR, direct sum I is equal to 1 to R Mi for any positive integer R, where NR is isomorphic to M and Mi is non-zero submodules. So for this, we assume that M is non-Kohafian. Kohafian module is that if we consider any injective endomorphism from M to itself, then it is an automorphism. Non-Kohafian, so we assume that not every injective endomorphism is an automorphism. So it means Fm is equal to N1, where N1 is a submodule of proper submodule of M. So we consider G N1 to M be an isomorphism. As M is quasi-F injective module, it means there exists H M to M such that H restricted on N1 is equal to G. And then this M can be written as N1 direct sum kernel H, and kernel H is nothing but your module M1. And now again N1 is non-Kohafian, so by the similar argument we get N2 M to be written as N2 direct sum M2, where N2 is isomorphic to N1 and M2 is non-zero. Thus M is equal to N2 direct sum M1 direct sum M2. Now continue this process. After finite number of steps we get this result, because M is finitely quasi-F injective module, and each NR is isomorphic to M, and MIs are non-zero. Conversely, we assume that this results hold, and then M is non-Kohafian. It is clear that this M is non-Kohafian because it is not directly finite, because every directly finite module is Kohafian. So now for an M cyclic module, the condition of MF injective module is satisfies the condition C2 and C3. So quasi-F injective module also satisfies the condition C2 and C3. Now we generalize the idea of M small principally injective module to M small finitely injective modules. So for this, we take the finitely M generated submodule to be small submodule, and take any homomorphism from small finitely M generated submodule from M to N can be homomorphism from M to N. So the module is called M is called N is called M is small finitely M generated, and if N is M quasi small finitely N injective M injective, then it is called quasi NF injective. So direct sum and direct product is also small finitely injective, and this is the important result that we prove the following conditions are equivalent for a projective module M. Every quotient of an MSF injective module is MSF injective, and every quotient of MF injective module is MSF injective. SF injective means a small finitely injective, and every quotient of M injective module is M injective. Every injective R module is MSF injective. Every small finitely M generated submodule of M is projective. This 1 implies 2 implies 3 implies 4 is obvious. So now we go to prove.
Skip the proof. You have explained the
Okay. Now we come on to the equivalent condition for a hollow R module M. MF injective module is MSF injective. Because 1 implies 2, we assume that N is MSF injective and K is a finitely generated submodule of M. Then K is a small finitely M generated submodule of M, because M is hollow. If you take any submodule, we already defined the module is said to be hollow if every submodule is small. So 2Z, our K is a small finitely M generated submodule. So every homomorphism K to N can be extended to a homomorphism from M to N. So N is MF injective. Now we gave another equivalent condition for an SF injective module to be MF injective if M is semi-regular module. So if M is semi-regular module, then your MSF injective module is MF injective, and these are the proof today, and these are the some references that I have used to prepare this paper. Thank you. Today I am suffering from fever and sneezing, so my I am not well prepared for the presentation. So, but if you have any question, then you may ask to me.
Anyone who is having any question? Once upon go to the theorem number 2.5.
Okay. 2.5. Yeah.
In this theorem, you have taken MBA quasi-F injective module. Then M is a known Kohofian if and only if there exists a decomposition. So decomposition of a, here M is showing the quasi-F injective module. What is F here? Finitely.
Yeah.
F
Yeah,
is
yeah. F means
finitely.
finitely. Yeah.
Okay, so decomposition you have shown as I can see N. N is also a injective module. What is N here?
No, 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 no,
What is N?
no.
What is N?
Your M is only quasi F injective module. It means M
N,
is
you have
MF injective module.
M is a quasi F injective module. You have written quasi F injective
Okay.
module in the decomposition, and in decomposition you have written NR direct sum of, then bracket direct sum of I goes to 1 to R Mi for any positive integer R. So what is NR
Okay.
here?
NR is a submodule of M which is isomorphic to M. There is a
NR
condition
is
here.
a submodule of M. It means we are taking the submodule of a F injective module. And any quasi F injective module can be written in the decomposition. Either we can show the decomposition in intersection form or not.
Because I am trying to prove that the quasi F injective module, if the quasi F injective module is non-coherent, that can be decomposed it into the this such type of submodules in which each NR is isomorphic to the given module M, and Mi is your non-zero. MIs are non-zero for every I.
Then in the proof you have taken let Fm is equals to N1 and N1 not equals to M. Here F is showing the image is the mapping. F is the automorphism from M to M. When you are taking image of it, then it is equals to N1. Let me complete first. Then you answer. Then G is the mapping from N1 to M, which is isomorphism. And then you have explained H is the mapping again M to M, such that H N1 is G. Therefore, M is N1 is the direct sum of kernel H. So kernel H, what is exactly kernel? How to define the kernel?
Kernel of a homomorphism is that goes that collection of those elements that sends the images of M to 0. Okay.
So
and
what is the meaning here?
here
M1 is equals to kernel H not equals to 0.
Because if the kernel H is 0, then to N1 and M is non, and so we cannot proceed to the our required result, because in all the cases our this M, if M is coherent, then this kernel H will be 0.
Actually, you relook the proof of this theorem because you have taken two maps. One is the F is automorphism. Second is the H M to M.
H is exist due to quasi F injectivity.
Okay. Just for the
and your F is your injective endomorphism, which is not an automorphism, but it means F is not surjective, and your H is a existing map due to quasi F injectivity. So your kernel H is never 0.
In this case, kernel H is never 0. It means for the quasi F injective module, when we will go it. Okay, sir. Thank you. Nice work.
Okay. Thank you,
All
ma'am.
the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Babu.
Thank you, sir.
Next, I like to invite Anuradha Sabarwal.
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. You are audible.
Okay.
Kindly share the screen. Proceed.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sharing.
Ma'am, is my screen visible?
Yes, your screen is visible.
Okay, so good morning to one and all present here. I am Anuradha Sarwal, Assistant Professor in Government College, Bahadur. The topic of my presentation is not on central item potential in grouping of symmetric group over Zn.
Now it's not.
So these
Your
are the
content is
sections
not
which we'll
visible.
be discussing in our presentation.
Wait. Your screen is visible, but content is not. Now it's visible. Flow presentation is visible.
Okay, thank you. So these are the following sections we will be discussing in our presentation. So first of all, we come to the application of idempotence. A corner ring ARA, if A is a central idempotent, is equals to RA with is a ring, and A is a multiplicative identity. As we all know, idempotence determine the direct decomposition of R as a module. The central idempotence determine composition of R as a direct sum of rings. So if we have R1, R2, Rn rings, then R is written as a sum of these rings. Then the identity element in each of these rings are central idempotents, and they are pairwise orthogonal, and the sum is equals to 1. Converse of this result is also true. That means if we have central idempotents A1, A2, An in R, which are pairwise orthogonal and having then R can be written as the sum of the corner rings associated with these central idempotents. Of the corner rings. Also, A is that. So let's first have a look on the definition of group ring. So if R is a ring and G is a group, then consider the set Rg of formal linear combinations of group elements with coefficients in R, and the sum and product are defined like this. The Rg is a ring with respect to the addition multiplication defined in the previous slide. We also define scalar multiplication in a group ring, scalars coming from the ring. Then the set of all invertible elements in Rg form a group called group of units of group ring Rg, and it is denoted by URG. And if R is invertible element in R and G be an any element in G, then the element Rg of group ring Rg has inverse, R inverse, G inverse, and this type of elements are called trivial units of Rg. So central idempotents are those idempotents which commute with every element of ring R, and the set of all these central idempotents is denoted by E of Z of R. Primitive idempotents are those idempotents which cannot be written as sum of two non-zero orthogonal central idempotents. So we have a well-known theorem which is Marshke's theorem, and it states that Rg is a semi-simple ring, group ring, if R is a semi-simple ring and G here is a finite and order of G is invertible in R. And if we have K, if we take K to be a field, then Kg is semi-simple only if and only if G is finite and characteristic of K does not divide order of G. Then a very well-known theorem, Wedderburn-Artin decomposition theorem for group rings we have, if K is a field and G is a finite group such that characteristic of K does not divide order of G, then Kg is a direct sum of finite number of two-sided ideals which are called simple components of Kg, and these ideals each of these ideals is a simple ring. So any two-sided ideal Kg is a direct sum of the members of the family of BIs, and each simple component Bi is isomorphic to full matrix ring of the form this, which is of order Ni over division ring, which contains isomorphic copy of K in its center, and this is the isomorphism. So here, and these full matrix rings, in this full matrix ring, Di Ni is isomorphic to these type of matrices which are minimal left ideal, and these ideals are distinct. Any simple Kg module is isomorphic to II. So these are the two books which we refer for our introduction and for our main results. Next, some more basic results which we'll be using in the proof of the upcoming theorems are K is an algebraically closed field such that characteristic of K does not divide order of G, and Kg is isomorphic to the direct sum of full matrix ring of order Ni over K, and the sum of squares of orders of these sum of squares of these orders is equal to order of. And in the next theorem states that the number S here is the number of conjugacy classes of G. Next result states that the center of each of this matrix ring of order n over k is equals to the identity matrix of n cross n over k. So in particular, if we have Zp as a field, that means if P is a prime and which does not divide order of G, then it is isomorphic to the direct sum of these full matrix rings, and G, order of G can be written as sum of Ni square, and here again S is the number of conjugacy classes of G. So we get motivation from the following papers. Osima in 1955 gives the explicit form of central idempotence in Kg, where K is a field. Mayer in 2008 computed primitive central idempotence of FQG. Martinez in 2015 computed central irreducible idempotence of the dihedral group algebra. Gao and Yui recently determined central right irreducible idempotence of generalized quaternion group algebra. So, getting motivated from those papers, we determine the number of central idempotents in group ring ZnSC, and we also give the explicit form of these central idempotents. Also, we obtained the number of central idempotents in ZnS4 provided n can be written as the product of distinct primes. Also, there are 2 raised to kl central idempotents in Z and Sm if n and m factorial has GCD equals to. So next we come to our main result. If n can be prime factorized into L distinct primes, then the number of central idempotents in Z and S3 are given by these 4 cases depending on the primes here, where the first case is when all the primes are greater than 3, then it is 2 raised to 3l. If one of the primes 2 other primes are greater than 3, it is 2 raised to 3l minus 1. If one prime is 2 and all others are greater than 3, it is 2 raised to 3l minus 2. And if one prime is 2, prime number is 3 and all others are greater than 3, then it is 2 raised to 3l minus 3. So for proof, we can follow this link. Also, we obtain explicit form of central idempotence in Z and S3. It is given by this expression where alpha is an idempotent in Zn, beta is a simultaneous solution of the following system of linear congruences, and gamma is a solution of the system of linear congruences.
Network is not appropriate. Your voice is lagging.
Okay, ma'am, are my slides visible?
Your slides is visible, but your
Ma'am, my slides are visible.
lagging. Visible. Continue.
Hello.
Slide is visible. Continue.
Okay. So from hello.
Yes, continue.
Okay. From the previous theorem, we calculate the number of central idempotents in Z6S3. This is an example. So we have 8 central idempotents, and it is given by the previous by the form which we have discussed in this previous theorem. So next is the number of central idempotents in Z2 S4, it is 2, Z3 S4, it is 8. So this proposition we have proved using Chinese theorem. And this proposition helps us to prove the following theorem. If n is the product of distinct primes, L distinct primes, the number of central idempotents in Z and S4 are given by these cases, depending on again depending on the conditions on pi. If all pi's are greater than 3, it is 2 raised to 5l. If p1 is 2 and pi's are greater than 3, it is 5 to is equal. One is 2, other is 3, and all others are greater than 3, then it is 2 raised to 5l minus. So we have example, we can calculate the number of central idempotents in Z7 S4, it is 2 raised to 5. Z10 S4, it is 2 raised to 5 into 2 minus 4, because 10 is written as product of two prime numbers, 5 into 2. Then 15 can be written as 3 into 5. So we have two prime factors, it is 2 raised to 5 into 2 minus 2. And this 30 can be written as 2 into 3 into 5. So we have three prime factors. One of them is 2, other is 3. So we apply the fourth case, and it is 2 raised to 5 into 3 minus 6. Then we have there are 2 raised to KL central idempotents in Z and Sn if n and m factorial are co-prime, and K is the number of conjugacy classes in Sm, and is the number of primes in the prime factorization of n. The following link. Next result, if we have a algebraically closed field such that characteristic of K does not divide order of Sn, then there are 2 to K central idempotents in Sn, where this K is the number of conjugacy classes in Sn. So if for example, if we take n equals to 4, then there are 2 raised to 5 central idempotents in KS4. Here 5 is in S4 we have 5 conjugacy classes. So the number is 2 raised to 5. So in future, we are looking forward for computing the central idempotents of the leftover cases, which is for Z and Sm, where n and m factorial does not have GCD1, and for the group and for the group ring of alternating group over Zn also. So these are the following references which we have used in our paper. Thank you.
Hello.
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 Yes.
Am I audible?
Hello.
What is can you tell me the example of algebraically closed field that is the finite? Is this possible?
Sir, we cannot have a finitely closed field actually.
Okay, good, very good. Take.
Okay.
Nice presentation.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Excuse me. Hello.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You have mentioned
Yes,
in your
sir.
first theorem that every group, the
Okay.
order of the group invertible in R. I would like to ask what is mean by this. The order of the group invertible in the ring R. In the first theorem that you stated.
यानी कि हमारा 4 बचा है.
Hello.
About? Yes, sir.
In the first theorem, ma'am, you have stated that the order of the group is invertible in the ring R.
Go in your first theorem, Anuradha.
Okay, okay. for a main result or for the in the introduction part?
In the introduction.
Introduction
Yes,
part.
yes,
This is
yes.
our main. In main result, this is our first theorem. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. In the introduction. All right. All right. I'm just going. Here. In this one,
It's not visible.
Not visible.
Is it visible to someone?
No, it's not visible.
I don't
Your
see it.
references slide is visible only.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. And
Next page.
Next point. Let G be a finite group and K is algebraically closed for it.
okay. Is it visible now, sir?
No, I'm not seeing it. It's some more basic results
Show all the
which I
points.
can
Show
see
all
here.
the points. All the plot.
Okay. 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 Okay, let me come to the introduction and please let me know where it is. Okay, I'm just changing my slides.
Okay.
Okay, is it March-Case theorem you're talking about?
Yes, yes, that's theorem. The third point is the order of G is invertible in R.
Okay, so in the R G is a number, then if this is a very important role because in when we are talking about the characteristic of K, which does not divide order of G, and if we are taking that finite, if we are taking a field ZP, then we have taken point which we are having in the hypothesis of our theorems.
I want to ask that R is not always the ring of integers or real. Yeah, or this is true for only the ring of integers or reals, because the order of G is always positive numbers. So what is mean by this order invert? The R that you have taken here,
yes.
Is it a ring of integers or reals only?
Meaning by? Yes.
The R, the ring,
it is
R
a ring.
you have taken, what is R here? Ring? Is it a ring of reals or numbers?
Yes, R is a ring, sir. Yes, sir. In group rings, in group
ring of what?
Sir, it can be anything.
So then
combinations of it is actually a vector space which we are talking about, and the vectors come from the ring R.
Okay, that's why I'm asking if R is any ring, then what is mean by the order of G invertible here? How can be a positive real numbers, yeah, integers can be invertible in arbitrary ring? I want to know the definition of invertible here.
Sir, am I audible to you?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Sir, am I audible?
Okay, thank you. We'll see next time.
Sir, here order of G is simple. We are talking about this is invertible in that it means that if there is some other element, if we multiply these two, then it is a unit element in R. Okay. If we have some other element in R, then is the product of.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All the best.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
There was left the two.
Is Mr. Vijayanand or Amarjeet Kaur Sani are present?
Amarjeet is absent.
Anyone else is there?
Actually, she has
Both are absent.
presented. Actually, she submitted 2 papers. So she presented 1 paper yesterday. So
Okay,
I
okay.
think
Thank
she will not present today.
Okay, thank you.
Vijay Anand is here.
Okay.
Sir, then all presentation
Okay.
is over of this session.
इनका कौन है?
Thanks to all of you. We will send our feedback.
Sir, you have to unmute Ratnesh sir.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Umesh and Dr. Pratibha for giving time. Thank you very much
Thanks to you, sir.
for this
Thank you,
session chair.
Ratnesh.
So, on the behalf of our organizing committee, my sincere thanks to both. Okay.
And thanks to you,
Thanks,
sir.
Ratnesh.
Thanks to everyone, and thanks to you, sir, given the opportunity to be chair the session. Okay.
So I think the next session is 1:30. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, you may leave.
Okay.
इसको रिकॉर्ड बंद कर देना.